Hey you guys, this is Rafael from ShilohRelics.com. I hope you're having a good day. It's still a little rainy down here, but we're going to make it through it. Today we're going to talk about something that I mentioned in one of the earlier videos. In the one that we call the origin story, I told you about the sword that got me basically started in Civil War collecting. And I mentioned that I sold it, but I didn't tell you how I got it back. And I had several people say, "You got the sword, what happened?" So here's the whole story in case you missed it. I loved Civil War stuff from an early age. My dad had a metal detector in about 1977, 78, and we went metal detecting and he found our first Civil War artifact, a little pocket knife. And when I was in high school, I asked a young lady out on a date, go to pick her up, and her dad was cleaning up some stuff that he'd metal detected. And I thought it's so cool that you can find Civil War pieces. The next morning, he and I went metal detecting and I was just hooked. So I started going to antique shops and flea markets and looking for all kinds of Civil War pieces. And there was an antique shop in Pulaski, Tennessee. I go in and the man there knows me because he had worked with my dad earlier, and he says, "You like that old Army stuff, don't you?" And I said, "Yes." And he reaches behind the counter and he hands me a sword. And at the time, I don't know much, but I know Memphis is Southern. And as you can see, this is marked Memphis Novelty Works. And so my eyes get about this big. I'm so excited. I go home and the man had, and this is where the little difference in the story. I'm going to tell you my version and I'll tell you Dad's version. He had priced it to me at $65 or $68. I didn't have either. It might as well have been $10 million. I go home and I'm like, "Dad, I need to borrow the money." And he said, "For what?" And I said, "It's a sword. It's so cool. It's the greatest thing." And he's a little skeptical, so he rides over there with me. And he says that he wouldn't sell it to me. Dad says that he wouldn't sell it to me, but he would sell it to my dad. So that's where the difference comes in there. Either way, we get the sword for $65 or $68. I get it home and I'm so proud of it. And I show it to everybody that I meet. I'm like, "This is real and it's Confederate." And I take it around. And actually, I forgot. Here's a picture of it on my dorm room bed in 1992. I was so excited. I took pictures of it because I knew I was going to have to sell it because I couldn't afford to keep it. But I wanted pictures of it. And I've kept pictures of most everything I've ever sold. And I've got probably 4 or 5, maybe 6 million pictures of stuff that will hopefully someday be in either a price guide or a reference library. Sorry, I took a tangent there, known to do that. So I take this sword to the big Civil War show that was in Nashville at the time. It was first weekend of December and showed it around to everybody. I was so proud, and I did the shopping thing and I got bids from everybody. And a friend of mine, a man that would become a friend of mine, Bob Hammonds in Smyrna, offered me $1,450 for it. Half of it in cash and half of it in trade. And so that is what started my collection, because my first US buckle was $48 and I got to make 3 payments on it because I didn't have the $48 at the time. So Shiloh Relics grows. I get the shop in Shiloh. Lori and I run the shop. And when I finally got my feet under me and had a little bit of money, I started trying to track the sword down because I always missed it and I always wished I had it back because I have that collector gene in me. Everybody says it ended up in Florida, but we don't know who, and it's lost. About 6, 7, 8 years later, we're going to a show in Marietta, Georgia. And I'm walking by and I look down and I'm like, "That's my sword." Because I remembered every detail about it because I loved it. I wanted it back. And remember, I got $1,450 for it. Confederate swords had grown in popularity and had went up a lot. And so I'm looking at the sword. I want it back. It's $5,600. And the guy won't take any less. Don't know what he paid for it. Didn't ask. Never ask what they paid for it because that's totally irrelevant. So I end up getting the sword. I get over the hurt of having to pay that much for my sword, but I've got it back and I'm so proud, and I show it to everybody again and tell them the story. And I end up finding the right kind of scabbard for this sword a couple of years later. So I've got it back with me. It's in an original Confederate scabbard. I've kept it every day since. I've shown it to everybody, and it's a thing of pride with a collector. That's what got me started in it. And as for the sword itself, this is a Confederate enlisted man's cavalry saber. They patterned these swords after the U.S. model 1840. They were heavily made in the South because they were one of the least expensive swords that they could make. They were very durable, and they were simple. Most of them don't have a marking, but as you can see, this one has the Memphis Novelty works, and they were made in Memphis, Tennessee by Thomas Leach. And Thomas Leach was he really made a lot of things. He made swords, had contracts with the government to do things. They made these swords with this marking from September 1861 to May of 1862, and they had to stop because the Union forces took over Memphis then. They went on, and he made other things for quite some time during the war, but this was one of the early ones. They show up in this area because we are in West Tennessee, and they show up with a fairly regular basis because he made a lot of them, and he made a quality piece. The sword means a lot to me, and that's one thing you'll learn with collecting. If it's important to you, it's priceless. And you see these on the market in this kind of condition in the $8,000 to $10,000 range on a fairly regular basis. But all you collectors know, when you have something that you cherish, it's priceless. And unless my family got sick, nobody will ever own this one but me. I hope that you guys are doing well. I hope that when you get the opportunity that you are kind. I hope you remember that everybody is essential, and I hope y'all have a great day, and I'll catch you next time.